I've just had one.
2.
I've had four different jobs.
Well, I'm a student, so I've only really ever worked one job, which is packing with produce for 4 years, kind of on and off over summer, but yeah.
3? Yep.
They're all completely different, yeah.
First time, didn't like it. You know, you did it for money and then was like bored. Second one, wanting a change, burnout. Yeah.
Because I was bored with the first one and I couldn't do the first one anymore.
Just went for the easy options, and
One, I didn't want to go back to it. It was tedious, and also by that stage I'd had my family, had children, and it wasn't really possible to go back, so we had to pick up a new career.
Really, I just had one. I did the same thing for a number of companies.
So I moved from being a legal secretary to a motelier, so that went from being an employee to owning my own business with my husband, yeah.
Substantially one.
Same.
Yeah, for the most part of my working life, one career.
0.
So many.
Counting?
Alright,
Oh, well, like as a kid I did 1 and that was dairy farming.
8?
1.
Maybe 9?
I've just had one career as a nurse, which I trained for in 1983, so I've been doing it 40 years.
Joiner. A joiner. Well, I've been a joiner, but I've been a manager for a timber frame company in Scotland.
But I've climbed up the ladder, so I'm not just a nurse, I'm an advanced nurse practitioner now, and I've worked in lots of different roles, mainly working for the NHS, and I still work there now.
I always tried to do jobs that hinge around my hobbies that I'm doing, because I don't want to do a job that's just a job. I want to incorporate that into some sort of decent lifestyle.
Does that involve being a mother and caring for children? For me, 2, at least 2, yeah.
But it's just a range of when you work more niche jobs, you get made redundant a lot, or they're not what you expected, or
Natural disasters.
multiple ones.
Injury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, all of that.
The last time I worked for 43 years for the same company, although it did change ownership twice.
Oh my God, I've mainly had one secretarial work.
I just had the one career I did. I left school, I did an apprenticeship in a car factory, and I spent 40 years there before taking early retirement, and I've not worked since.
Yeah, I'm similar. I've been, I was a civil servant in the UK, and I've been an office administrator all my life, and I actually retired a couple of years ago at 72, so I've had from the age of kind of 17 to 72, I've worked most of my life. I had a bit of time out when I had my children, but had a long working life really, as in an office.
4.
I'm a retired teacher.
I've had a few. I started out teaching shorthand and typing, and then worked for a banquet hall which organised singing and food and things.
That's how I met her.
Yes. And then after that selling chemicals to the Far East and Australia.
I was an apprentice electrician, then I was an electrician, then there wasn't enough money in that, so I was builders labourer for a while. Then I got into fiberglass, building yachts, and then I got into concrete, building multi-storey buildings. Yeah, that's me. I'm still in concrete, building multi-storey buildings.
I wanted to be a court reporter at first, but I didn't have the nerve to go ahead, so I ended up teaching. And then the money wasn't as good, so I moved on.
I was going to be a PE teacher and minor in special ed, and then someone said I should do the opposite. So I did major in special education, and I don't know, my mom worked at the YMCA and I was exposed to handicapped people, and I always enjoyed teaching and playing school and stuff, so that's why I did that.
Oh.
Well, start to tape over because she's had about 12.
Left school when I was 14, and for the first 14 years I lived with and worked with my father as a station hand on a sheep property in New South Wales.
I was a professional weaver. I was a professional recreation director. I was a media specialist and television producer. I was a media, I worked as administrative specialist for the STD HIV clinic and was funded by CDC.
And after I finished working there, so I was 14, I went away with a mulesing contractor, marking the mules and lambs from Warren in New South Wales. And then from there I came home and started off rouseabouting in the shearing shed.
I teach during the summer. I teach classes to students who are elementary and middle school in the STEM. I'm the robotics expert. And I'm a mom and a grandma, and those are probably my best jobs.
And then after the shearing, he had to have an operation on his hand, and that went south. It didn't work, and he wasn't allowed to shear anymore, so had several jobs after that, didn't you?
Yeah, worked on a horse stud and drove school buses for 15 years, and that was the last paying jobs I had. And I worked at an abattoir before that for 7 years, so I've done a bit.
And retired 2 years ago.
Retired at the age of 71.
I got bored. I did, and a lot of times they were overlapping. So I'm a professional weaver going around the country teaching and showing my handiwork at the same time that I'm working and just taking vacation days to do this. So there's one job that pays the benefits and one job that feeds the creative soul. And then when I was doing television producing, I was doing a lot of fluffy things, actually for our local Fox station. And our health department said, we want to do a program, would you come head it for us? So that's when I got involved with the infectious diseases at the health department, bringing my previous background with me.
Your secondary degree.
Yeah, and my secondary degree. I have 2 degrees. And that's when I got into teaching and setting up classes for doctors and nurses around the world in infectious diseases.
When I left school, I went on a farm. I was going to go and do a university, but I didn't. I went to Australia and travelled instead. So I blew that. But when I came back, I worked for Avis, a rental car company, and I managed their branches for about 10 years around New Zealand. And after that, I became a company rep for a big company that serviced all the fishing industry, all the major sea lords, all the major fishing industries. They were my clients for 20 years. And after that, my wife and I had an import business for a while, importing, and now probably about 7 years after that, I worked for St Vincent de Paul, and that's where my last job, up until last year, was St Vincent de Paul, just as a driver and everything that you do there, giving food out, helping those in need.
And I worked at university for my whole career. I worked in a clinical lab for a while, then I worked teaching students in chemical engineering, and that was for 12 years, and I moved to become the chemical safety officer for the university, dealing with medical research.
I was a nurse when I first left school. Left and got married, and I mean, at that stage you stayed at home with your children until they grew up, and then at the age of when our youngest was 13, I got a job with a interior design lady, and I used to make all their fancy curtains and things, and I did that up until my grandchildren were born. My daughter had twins, and she needed a lot of help. They were very unsettled, so I retired from that, and just as well because it ruined my shoulders. So
I was always with the same institution, and I had to jump from department to department for advancement because it plateaued so easily. So unfortunately I had to leave friends and behind, but move on to that.
Yeah, and I've helped look after the grandchildren ever since. And as a pastime now, I work for, well, I don't work for them, I volunteer my time for Aussie Hero Quilts and make quilts for the deployed soldiers overseas. And that's just a charity thing that we do.